A 15,000-mile road trip from Florida to Alaska in a camper van with a dog is already overwhelming, but we have a catch. We have one anchor date on the calendar that we absolutely cannot miss. My papa's 95th birthday in South Dakota in September. That date is non-negotiable, so everything before and after that has to flow around it. Alaska isn't a place where you can just pick a week and go. You have to think about the snow, road openings, rain, mosquitoes, wildfires, daylight hours, and the tourist season. It's Katie from Katie's Corner Travel Time. Welcome to our travel escapades. If you missed it, I am vlogging our 15,000-mile camper van road trip to Alaska from Florida with so many places in between. I'm sharing our planning process to hopefully help someone else avoid some mistakes, maybe think about some things that we're learning that we had no idea before we started this journey. And honestly, I'm hoping to learn from you too, help us avoid some mistakes. Planning this Alaska road trip has been one of the most exciting things I've ever done, but it's also been one of the most overwhelming things I've ever done. There were moments where I thought, oh my gosh, are we actually doing this? I'm pretty sure I even asked my husband, are we doing this? Other moments where I thought, oh, all right, we're doing this, but I have no idea what I am actually doing. And there were even moments of, are we making a mistake? The last video, I'm like, are we crazy? But I don't think we're crazy. I don't think we're making a mistake. I think we're just learning as we go. Today, I want to walk you through some of the hardest parts of planning this trip, the things that almost tripped us up, and how we are solving them. Again, if you have any advice, we are open ears. We would like to avoid the mistakes if possible. If you're planning your own Alaska adventure, even just a big road trip, doesn't have to be to Alaska, you're probably going to hit some of these walls too. So let's start with the obvious one, distance. I knew Alaska was far, but I did not understand the scale of this trip until I actually started putting it on a map and mapping it out. You don't just drive to Alaska. You drive through multiple states, across Canada, through the Yukon, and then you get to Alaska. But then everything inside Alaska is also far apart. So at one point, I zoomed out of the Google Maps and literally laughed because the route looked like a toddler scribbled on the screen, which I sometimes am a little bit toddlerish. But anyhow, that's irrelevant. The only way to make this manageable was to break it into chunks. I did, regions first, and then I did some major stops along the way. Then I had realistic drive days, like how long van fatigue, driving fatigue is very real. Then the experiences that we actually were like must-dos that we're not going to negotiate on. We're going to do them. So once I stopped trying to plan the whole thing at once, it finally felt doable. So if you're planning your own trip, break it into chunks early. Don't try to plan Alaska as one giant route. It will absolutely overwhelm you. I know it did me when I was like, where do I even start? So how I ended up starting is deciding on some anchor dates or locations. So build them out from there. For example, we knew we wanted to visit a few friends. So we checked with them on their availability before locking in dates and then work out logistics around it. But then came the route changes. I have never changed my mind so many times about a trip or probably anything, if I'm being honest. Every time I watched a new video or read a new blog, I'd think, oh wait, maybe we should go this way instead. Oh wait, this is something I really want to see as well. Or that looks cool. And then we met with friends. I told them our route. They've done this trip 2 or 3 times, I think twice. And they asked about one of the specific areas that looked like we were backtracking down in the Homer, Seward area. I couldn't remember why I had done it that way months ago, but I knew there had to be a reason. So I sat down and went back through everything. And then I remembered I had planned a second day of whitewater rafting. Our first day is going to be in Denali, weather pending, of course. But this was not an accident that I booked a second one. I was hoping to do a second one. I love to go whitewater rafting. But it also wasn't necessary. I've done whitewater rafting different places. As long as the Denali one pans out, I've done it in Alaska. So especially when that one day threw off the entire route and it affected about 10 days of the trip, it wasn't wrong. Like I said, it wasn't a mistake. It just wasn't the most efficient or scenic way to go. So I removed the second rafting day, made it an optional thing if we come across an area that might make sense. And that made the route so much smoother. But that change meant we were now going a different direction on the ferry that I had already booked. We're taking the ferry from, we were going Valdez to Whittier, now we're going to Whittier to Valdez. So also important to know, the ferry only runs on certain days between the locations. While I was reviewing that route change, at the same time, I removed a 3-night stop that was honestly just a meh location later in the trip. That freed up more time for Alaska, which is great. But now I had to rework the route to place those extra days where they'd be best used and still match the ferry schedule. And that is why I am now on what I hope is the final review of the itinerary, making sure everything is confirmed and smooth, the necessary reservations. We need a reservation for the ferry because we're taking our camper van and it's an oversized vehicle, so we have to have that. My advice to you, revisit your route every few weeks. You'll catch things you forgot. Your priorities will shift as you learn more things. Maybe you learn that you want to see something different. So just kind of go through your itinerary a few times. And if you're open to using AI, I use CoPilot and Gemini. You can throw your entire itinerary into that and ask it to be an expert Alaska road trip advisor to help you identify oversights. Giving it a job, a persona, it helps AI really hone down on what you're trying to do. We also had to be clear on where and when we needed to be in certain places. So a huge factor in our timeline that we had an anchor date we absolutely couldn't miss was my papa's 95th birthday in South Dakota. The date is non-negotiable, so everything before and after that date in September had to flow around that. The next obstacle would be weather. Alaska isn't a place where you can just pick a week and go. You have to think about the snow, road openings, rain, mosquitoes, wildfires, daylight hours, and the tourist season. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's ever the perfect time to go. I had 6 tabs open comparing average temperatures for different weeks. Thankfully, CoPilot and Gemini helped make it a little easier, saved me some time. Eventually, I had to accept that there's no perfect time. There's only the time that works best for my priorities, your priorities when you're trying to go. For example, if we're going to drive that far, I wanted at least a month inside of Alaska. I did not want to feel rushed. Still don't have enough time to do it, right? But we picked our dates primarily because they worked around our anchor dates and the availability of experiences we wanted to see and do. And that was important to try to keep in mind that it's going to be busy. It's touristy time because it's summer. So my advice is to build a flexibility into the plan. So pick your dates based on your priorities, not perfection. Alaska will never, ever give you the perfect conditions. You're going to have to plan on doing things in the rain probably and maybe cooler weather. When I've been there before, we had rain gear and we were able to enjoy our day. It was beautiful, actually. So we still add flex days in case of the weather ruining a tour or sometime in a location. For example, when I was talking to Chris at Jay Bear's tour, he mentioned that last year they had around 15 canceled groups and only could reschedule about 10 of them. So you also have to go into it with the understanding that some things might not happen, might not be possible. We added flex days on each side of this particular flight tour because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. And we have no idea if we'll ever go back to Alaska. So we did not want to miss it because we gave zero room for error. Another challenge was the lack of services in some areas. You may have read about this if you started researching Alaska. There are stretches where you can go hours without gas, miles without gas, food, cell service, or even a bathroom. And listen, I am absolutely the person who lets the gas light come on and still thinks I can make it. Thank goodness my husband is not that way. Starlink will help us find fuel and services along the way, but we still made a general list of fuel stops in the remote areas and bought the 2026 Milepost Alaska book so we don't mess up or simply forget. We also created a never go below a half a tank rule. When you're in the Yukon, that's not just being dramatic, that's being smart, especially when you're traveling with a dog in an area you're not familiar with, very limited services. We do have AAA, but I don't want to count on that. I don't want to be stuck on the road for hours because I didn't plan ahead, right? So we're limited on space and on the camper van, so carrying a fuel can isn't ideal unless we absolutely have to. When we talked to our friends, they said, if you get gas regularly, you won't need to do that. So if you're driving in remote areas, plan fuel stops ahead of time. Don't rely on memory or cell service. And don't be like me, waiting for the low fuel light to come on. It's a good thing Joe's driving mostly. Then there was the information overload. There are blogs, forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels, guidebooks, friends, and everyone has a different opinion. Some people say you absolutely need reservations for everything. Others say you don't need any, just wing it. I had to make a rule for myself. If 3 independent sources say the same thing, I trust it. If both Gemini and CoPilot line up when I ask them independently, I trust it. So, like example, when I was picking out the e-bikes, both Gemini and CoPilot actually gave me the exact same bike within what I was trying to find. So I'm like, all right, I trust this. Also, I had to make a rule based on knowing myself. You have to know yourself as a traveler. If we're staying more than 2 nights in a location, I want a reservation. I don't want to wing it and just hope for the best. I don't. That's not my personality. I don't like wasting time on the trip figuring things out. I even like having restaurant ideas. I'm not sold on them. I'm not making reservations for these places, but I want to have an idea of places that would fit what we like to eat and experience. But I also need to factor in Maggie's safety. Winging it with a dog is not always possible. It can be very unsafe. You might even be hearing her right now as she's walking through our house. It's like on cue. So my advice is to create your own decision rules early. It cuts through the noise and keeps you from second guessing everything. And if you're traveling as a couple or a family, make sure you all agree on those rules. Everybody needs to have a similar plan and expectation for the trip. And speaking of Maggie, she is a huge part of this trip. She's coming with us. That means our planning doesn't just include her, it revolves around her. She's a 12-year-old, almost 50-pound dog. Her safety, her comfort, her needs, that alone eliminates a lot of, let's just see what happens approach. We can be flexible, but we can't be reckless. During the summertime in Montana and Wyoming and places like that, it's going to be hot. We can't take the chance of her being left in the van and not plugged in with air conditioning. So if you're traveling with a dog, plan for them, not around them. It does change everything that we're doing. She's even going to be boarded a couple times, and we've also rented some short-term rentals or hotels for her. Well, us and her. Another thing I had to factor in is Joe. Joe is my husband. He may not even know this about himself, and I'm sure we'll have an interesting conversation after he hears this, but he really needs some downtime every few days or so. Usually after 3 or 4 high-energy, activity-packed days, he just needs a breather. He's never technically said that, but I've just noticed it over the years that we've traveled together. He's doing the bulk of the driving while I work, so I want this to be enjoyable for him too. That means building in some rest days, some slower days, some days where we don't have a big agenda. That may not be possible the entire trip, in the 3-4 day period after giving him a break, but I've also made it a priority right next to Maggie. So know your travel partner's energy patterns. If you have kids, make sure you are aware of how they don't always communicate as much, so make sure you are aware of how they behave or respond to a lot of travel. It will save your trip and your sanity. And honestly, one of the biggest mental stressors for me is my work, because it's a different time zone, a flexible schedule, and a big change from our normal routine where I am pretty much available all the time. My boss and I have talked about it, and we're going to make it work. But it's still something I have to be aware of. I won't be available as quickly sometimes because I am not a morning person, and when we're 4 hours difference, I'm not probably gonna be working same time zone, same schedule as them. I have no doubts I'll get the job done. I've worked every vacation I've ever taken in multiple time zones, but this one is much longer. Obviously, I think the longest I've done before is 16 days. So this isn't meant to be a true vacation. We'll be living on the road, doing normal life things, laundry, cooking, working, and everything else. But it's still a factor in the planning, and it's an important factor because I take a lot of pride in my job and my work. And of course, I also have my business, which is money coaching. And so I have to factor in my clients into the itinerary too. Time zone, Starlink for cell service, just life. I have to work around all of that to make sure that I'm giving my clients the best version of Coach Katie that I can. So if you're working on the road, know how you plan to approach it. Whether it's experiences over work blocks and taking PTO, shifting hours, or is it building your itinerary around your work windows? Having clarity here helps you and your employer and your coworkers. Again, managing expectations is really important here. So putting the dates that you're going to be on full PTO on a calendar, putting the dates that you're going to be available or the times you're going to be available on the calendar for people, that's going to be helpful. I personally chose a hybrid of quite a few work-only reset days. That's all I plan to do. And then I have days where I'll flex work to make sure I can do a tour, Sunrise Lake visit, and so on. So it's in between. I will be able to work every day of the week, but maybe only an hour here and then 8 hours or 9 hours there. So planning the trip to Alaska has been a journey on its own because of all of this. Have you felt this way before? Have you had to work around a job? How did you overcome these obstacles? What helped you keep it smooth for you and your employers? Every challenge we hit has made the plan stronger, and honestly, it made me even more excited for the actual trip because I feel like we have a really good plan in place. So if you're planning your own Alaska adventure, I hope this helped you feel a little bit more prepared, or at least giving you some things to think about and a lot less overwhelming, like how I felt when I started this. If you're planning something big, remember, your obstacles aren't signs to stop. They're just part of the process. And if you've done something similar, please share anything I might be forgetting or that you would do differently than what I have said. Again, I am open ears. We want to make this as smooth as possible. If you want some more behind the scenes planning videos, maybe budgeting, route breakdowns, dog logistics, packing, I have so much more to share. Please share what you'd be interested in hearing about. I'll try to answer the questions. Thanks for joining, guys. Please hit subscribe, leave a comment, share. It helps us to know whether we should keep making this kind of content or if we should do something different, and just answer your questions too. All right, back to planning. We've got a lot of miles ahead of us. Happy travels.